Your dad really wanted everybody to come and learn these traditional ways. That's one of his really biggest, deepest inspirations, is just education. Yeah.
Eustace Conway's life has always felt a little bigger, a little stranger, and a lot more layered than what most people ever get to see. So when talk starts about a hidden tunnel system on his land, it doesn't feel out of place at all. If anything, it fits the kind of world he's been building for decades. And looking into it doesn't just lead underground, it leads straight into everything that makes Eustace who he is. Where does this tunnel go or ends? Conway's tunnel system and what it suggests. People talk about hidden things on Eustace Conway's land, the same way they talk about strange old stories passed down in tiny mountain towns. Half curiosity, half respect, and a little bit of that feeling that maybe, just maybe, there's more truth to it than anyone wants to admit. So when the idea of a secret tunnel system comes up, it lands surprisingly naturally. Turtle Island isn't the kind of place where everything sits out in the open. It's layered, tucked away, hand-built, and shaped over decades by a man who never lived life in a straight line. What makes the whole thing interesting is how easily something like a tunnel could exist out there without raising alarms. The land isn't flat or predictable. It rolls, dips, narrows, and opens in sections that feel like they're hiding their own stories. There are pockets of earth that stay cool all year, ridges with natural folds, old roots that twist like they're guarding something underneath. It's the kind of terrain where anything hidden could stay hidden for a long time. And then there's Eustace himself, someone who has always lived by building things with his own hands. People who build everything naturally think in layers. They think function first. They think long-term. They think about how one part connects to another, how water flows, how tools need to be stored, how weather hits, where land is strongest or weakest. When you start imagining someone like that shaping a property as wild as Turtle Island, the idea of an underground space stops sounded dramatic and starts sounding practical. Think about the way Eustace works. He doesn't believe in waste. He doesn't believe in shortcuts. But he also doesn't believe in unnecessary effort. He believes in using what the land gives: shade, slope, moisture, natural cover.
Simple activities like butchering a rooster, tanning a deer skin, or rubbing sticks together to make a fire.
And the earth itself can be one of the sturdiest materials to work with if you know how to read it. People who live close to the land often create spaces that the average eye would never think to look for. It's not about hiding things, it's about designing life around the landscape instead of forcing the landscape to bend to you. And if you've seen the way Turtle Island is set up, you know nothing is standard. His buildings aren't lined up neatly. His work areas aren't centralized. Paths weave around trees, not through them. Cabins sit in spots that look random until you notice how perfectly they fit the light, wind, and slope around them. Everything feels like it grew there. And in a place like that, a hidden passage or a tucked-away underground space wouldn't stand out. It would blend in, just like everything else he built. You can picture the possible uses without needing anything far-fetched. A cool underground area could keep food longer. A low, sheltered spot could store tools, leather, herbs, or materials sensitive to weather. A narrow, earth-covered walkway might let someone move gear between work areas without fighting wind, rain, or snow. A small chamber dug into a slope could be a quiet place for work he didn't want interrupted. Tanning hides, drying herbs, carving bows, fixing equipment. All of it fits with the way Eustace thinks. Simple solutions, close to nature. No need to show them off. And then there's the privacy. Eustace has never been a man who invites the whole world into every corner of his life. Turtle Island isn't a public attraction. It's a living space with its own rhythms, rules, and quiet corners. People often forget that he spent decades working there long before a single camera showed up.
Through all of that time, everybody on planet Earth has made their own house. In fact, that's been important.
For most of his life, the only audience he had was the forest around him. He could build what he wanted, where he wanted, without needing permission or applause. That long stretch of private building time created layers of work that even regular visitors never see. Old paths overgrown with vines, foundations swallowed by moss, storage spots tucked into slopes, tools left in places only he remembers. The land isn't a museum. It's a working life lived in slow, steady construction. And when you imagine that timeline, all those years, all those seasons, all those experiments, it becomes clear how something like a tunnel could fit right in without drawing attention. This isn't the kind of story where you expect blueprints or perfect explanations. It's the kind where the land and the man match so well that hidden things simply make sense. And even if no one ever walks every inch of Turtle Island, the possibility alone tells you something important. Eustace builds in ways that go deeper than what meets the eye. And once you look at it from that angle, you start seeing a pattern, not just underground, but everywhere. Everything he's created has layers, intention, and quiet practicality. And that leads naturally into the part of his world people actually can see. The primitive structures that define Turtle Island from the outside, long before anyone even wonders what might be beneath it. And if what might lie underground is interesting, what he's built above it is even more revealing. His primitive structures. If there's one thing that immediately stands out about Turtle Island, it's the buildings, not because they're big or modern, but because they look like pieces of another time. The first time people see them, they usually pause. There's a certain raw honesty to a structure built by hand, using tools with no batteries, no engines, no shortcuts. And Eustace Conway has been building like that for most of his life.
Turtle Island into a self-sustaining preserve. People can come to work hard and live free.
His structures feel more like extensions of the land than anything placed on top of it. The cabins don't have that polished, store-bought finish. They're shaped through patience, not machines. Logs are peeled by hand. Corners are notched with the kind of accuracy that only comes from muscle memory. You can tell where he stood to work, where he rested a tool, where he adjusted the fit and tried again. These buildings hold fingerprints in the wood grain. They show his stubbornness, his skill, and his understanding of how materials behave. There's a reason people say Eustace doesn't just build a cabin. He patterns it into the landscape. Some cabins sit close to small slopes, using the earth itself as insulation. Others perch near creeks, where the cool air runs like a low current, even in summer. You can tell he doesn't pick building spots for convenience. He picks them because the land gives something: shade, wind protection, dryness, vantage, quiet. It's a way of building that doesn't fight nature. It works with it. And that's the same mindset that makes people think he might build underground as well. Everything with purpose, everything with a natural logic behind it. The craftsmanship behind his structures comes from repetition and a kind of stubborn patience. There are thousands of tiny choices that go into building a cabin by hand. How to angle a roof so snow slides instead of buckling it. How to pick logs that shrink evenly. How to fit corners so tight you don't need nails. People see the final result and think it's simple, but simple is the hardest thing to get right. It means there's nothing extra, nothing decorative, nothing just for show. Every board has a job. Every joint has intention, and that's just the cabins. Turtle Island is full of smaller structures too. Sheds, barns, lean-tos, tool shelters, smokehouses, drying racks. Each one is placed exactly where its job makes sense. You don't put a smokehouse next to the breeziest ridge. You don't put a workshop where the afternoon sun hits like an oven. You don't put a storage shed where water naturally settles after rain. Someone who watches the land long enough knows these things without needing a weather app or modern tools. The land tells you what fits where. There's a certain rhythm to how the buildings connect. Trails weave between them in a way that feels organic. Footsteps have carved these paths over years. They twist around trees, follow natural contours, and dip through soft pockets of earth. When you walk them, you can tell they weren't designed on paper. They were found. Eustace learns the land by moving through it, season after season, until the best routes appear naturally. His outdoor kitchen setups are another example of how he builds from instinct. Instead of a single modern kitchen, he uses the outdoors: flat stones for cooking platforms, sheltered spots for drying, wood piles organized near the places where he splits them. Everything is arranged by use, not aesthetics. If he needs something often, it stays close. If something needs shade, he puts it where the mountainside gives that naturally. If something needs airflow, he finds the gap between two slopes where the breeze funnels through. Even the smallest details feel intentional. The way tools rest under overhangs, the way wood piles lean against natural braces, the way benches are carved directly from logs instead of made from processed lumber. Nothing is wasted, nothing is rushed, and nothing looks like it came from a hardware store. His structures remind you what building looked like before modern convenience replaced skill with speed. The most interesting part is how all these buildings feel connected, even though they're spread out.
About one of the buildings, we've never had any health issue here. Pretty strong statement.
There's a sense that everything plays a role in a bigger system. The cabins give shelter. The sheds protect tools. The barns store hay and feed. The open-air work areas create space for tanning hides, carving wood, teaching classes, or running the school programs he held for years. Each structure has its own purpose, and together they make Turtle Island feel like a handcrafted village. This also explains why people imagine hidden areas, tucked-away spaces, or underground rooms on his land. When someone has been shaping a property for decades with this level of intention, the idea of unseen parts doesn't feel dramatic. It feels consistent. Eustace doesn't build things halfway. If he needs something done, he builds it himself, and builds it to last, whether people notice it or not. And spending time around these primitive structures makes you realize how deeply his personality is carved into the land. He builds strong when he needs strength, simple when he needs function, and quiet when he needs space. Nothing is random. Everything reflects the way he sees the world. These buildings are the surface of Turtle Island, visible pieces of a life dedicated to self-sufficiency. And once you start understanding the handmade world above ground, it becomes a lot easier to imagine the more hidden, quieter features that might exist deeper in the property. But the structures are only one layer of the story. The land itself, its twists, pockets, ridges, and forgotten corners, tells just as much about how Eustace lives and builds. And that's where the picture expands even more. Turtle Island, layout, land, and hidden corners. If the buildings on Turtle Island show how Eustace thinks,
Thousands of people have died in the storm here recently. Thousands, not hundreds.
the land itself shows why he thinks that way. His property isn't a flat stretch of grass where everything sits neatly in view. It's a mix of hills, valleys, ridges, small clearings, and dense woods that twist and fold in ways that feel like they're hiding their own stories. People who visit for the first time often say the same thing. The property feels much bigger than it appears on a map. That complexity creates natural pockets of privacy long before anyone ever thinks about hidden tunnels or secret chambers. One of the first things you notice is how unpredictable the land is. Walk 10 minutes and the environment can change completely. In one spot, you're under a tall, shaded grove with soft, mossy ground. A few steps later, you're climbing a rocky slope dotted with wild grasses. Streams cut through low areas, forming little dips that stay cool all summer. Each natural feature creates corners and folds that seem designed to remain unnoticed, spaces that, if someone were so inclined, could hide small structures or underground work. You start to understand why Eustace chose this land. It gives him room to build, room to wander, and room to shape things over decades without feeling constrained. Turtle Island feels like a place that asks you to explore it slowly. There's no straight-line path, no shortcuts. You discover it the same way Eustace probably did. One step, one season, one project at a time. Even after decades of building, there are areas that feel untouched. Eustace doesn't clear huge swaths of forest just to make life convenient. Fallen trees create natural boundaries, and he works around them. New clearings appear slowly as he carves out workspaces or planting areas. Nothing is forced. Everything grows or is built in harmony with the land. That's why some areas feel secret, tucked away, or even slightly mysterious to visitors. They simply weren't meant to be central paths. These natural compartments make it easy to imagine spaces most people never see. A dip between two hills forms a quiet pocket where sound barely travels. A ridge can hide what's behind it from view. A dense stand of trees can create an almost invisible wall for anything built behind it. If someone needed a sheltered area for work, storage, or movement across the property, the land itself already provides it. That's exactly the kind of environment that fuels speculation about hidden passages or underground spaces without ever needing to break ground. The terrain also plays with sound and airflow in interesting ways. Some hollows carry faint echoes, others are dead silent. A shallow draft can run through a slope where no one expects it. Certain areas stay cool for longer periods, perfect for storage or sheltered workspaces. Someone familiar with the land could exploit these natural features to make life more efficient, whether for outdoor kitchens, food storage, or craft areas. And that's exactly what Eustace has done over decades. Time adds another layer of complexity. Paths that were once heavily used have softened and been reclaimed by moss. Old work sites are partially hidden by regrowth. Leaning posts or foundations peek through underbrush. These quiet leftovers create a sense of history, almost like the land is keeping its own archive of human activity. Visitors often notice only the busiest or most obvious areas, leaving the quieter corners unexamined. It's this combination of natural layout and human work that makes Turtle Island feel like it has layers. The hills and ridges shape it, the forests and streams divide it, and Eustace's hand-built structures weave through it. Each element reinforces the others. The land allows privacy.
I can't believe that a whole nation of people think that this is the land of the free when we can't hardly even take a poop the way we want.
The structures use the terrain to their advantage, and the layout makes practical sense for someone who's lived here for decades. And while the land itself might hide something, it also amplifies the significance of what's above ground. The cabins, sheds, work areas, and small shelters are arranged thoughtfully, often using natural features to protect them, support them, or keep them functional. Walking through the property, you start to see the invisible connections, the flow of water, the paths between workspaces, the shaded areas for drying or curing materials. Turtle Island isn't a random collection of buildings. It's a living, functioning ecosystem shaped by both nature and intention. Even if no one ever uncovers an underground passage, the property itself tells a story of clever design, patience, and understanding. The land and structures together show a philosophy. Work with nature, use what it provides, and plan for longevity. And when you start noticing these patterns, you begin to understand why the rumor of hidden tunnels feels plausible to outsiders. It fits perfectly with the way Eustace builds, moves, and lives on his land. But the story doesn't stop there. The next layer is how he uses the land for practical systems: water, tools, storage, and working spaces. That's where Turtle Island transforms from a collection of beautiful structures and natural corners into a fully functional wilderness property shaped entirely by Eustace Conway's vision. Conway's systems: water, tools, storage, working areas. Once you start noticing how Turtle Island's land and buildings connect, the next thing that stands out is the way Eustace Conway organizes his systems. Everything has a purpose.
We have a real problem with the storm, and the aftermath of the storm is the authority.
And everything is placed with intention. Water flows, tools are staged, storage is functional, and workspaces are carefully positioned. It's not just about living in the wilderness, it's about shaping the wilderness to work for him. And every system tells a story about how he thinks, plans, and lives. Water is the lifeblood of Turtle Island. Eustace doesn't rely on city plumbing. Instead, he works with natural sources. Streams, ponds, and small springs run through the property, and you can see evidence of how he channels or diverts them to serve cabins, gardens, and outdoor work areas. Gravity-fed lines move water where it's needed without pumps or electricity. Small hand-built dams or trenches guide runoff to prevent erosion or flooding. Every bit of water management is practical and simple, but it shows foresight and a deep understanding of the land. It's a system built over decades, refined by observation and adapted season by season. Tools are stored close to where they are used, but they're also kept organized and protected from the elements. Lean-tos, small sheds, and workbenches line the paths between cabins and open work areas. You can see that he thinks in terms of workflow. Chop wood near the storage area, build where the tools are already handy, repair gear next to a covered space. Even smaller touches, like hooks, shelves, and racks, are placed for efficiency. Everything has a home, and everything is easy to reach. Storage is another area where his practical approach shines. Root cellars, covered shelves, and shaded spots under overhangs keep perishable items safe. Food, herbs, hides, and crafted items all have designated places that use natural temperature control. If there's a cool breeze or a damp slope, that's where items go that need to stay cool. If sun and airflow are needed, they're positioned accordingly. Nothing is random. Every storage choice interacts with the surrounding environment to keep the system functional without modern conveniences. Working areas are spread across the property, each designed for the task it serves. Open-air spaces allow woodwork, hide tanning, or teaching classes without interfering with living areas.
For decades, Conway has been teaching people on his 1,000-acre compound in the Blue Ridge Mountains how to go off the grid.
Covered areas protect delicate materials or tools from rain. Even the smallest workbench shows care. The surface is flat, nearby storage is convenient, and the area connects to paths that make moving materials efficient. It's all about flow, minimizing unnecessary effort while maximizing what can be done in a day. Walking the property, you start to see how these spaces form a network, connecting cabins, sheds, water sources, and storage spots into one functioning system. These systems aren't static. They evolve as the land and the seasons dictate. Paths shift slightly with use. Drainage changes with rainfall, and new tools or structures require adjustment. Eustace's property is alive in the way he manages it. Every year brings small modifications that improve efficiency, safety, and functionality. It's a constant process of learning from the land and adjusting the human-made elements accordingly. And while these systems are incredibly practical, they also suggest a larger kind of organization. There's a rhythm to Turtle Island: cabins near water, tools staged near workspaces, storage placed with airflow in mind, paths designed to follow the natural contours. It's a layered network that, on first glance, looks random, but when you observe closely, shows a methodical, intelligent approach. And that methodical approach is exactly why some visitors speculate about hidden features or passages. A property designed with this much care above ground could easily contain more subtle, unseen solutions hidden in plain sight. What's most striking is how all of these systems, water, tools, storage, and workspaces, reinforce each other. Water runs past storage areas, keeping them cool. Paths connect cabins to workshops and gathering spaces. Tools are staged near the work they're needed for. Each part of the system supports the others, creating a functional property where nothing is wasted. Everything has a purpose, and every area contributes to the overall efficiency of life on Turtle Island. Even casual visitors can sense the thought behind it. Paths don't just connect buildings, they guide movement naturally. Wood piles are not just stacked, they're positioned where cutting, splitting, and drying are most convenient. Cabins are not just shelter, They're placed where airflow, sunlight, and slope make them most practical. The entire property functions like a living, breathing organism, one shaped entirely by Eustace's hand, knowledge, and experience. And while the public sees cabins, open areas, and streams, the true depth of his systems is often invisible at first glance. Hidden corners, shaded slopes, natural drainage pockets, and quiet nooks all play roles in the functionality of Turtle Island. Step by step, path by path, you start to understand how everything connects and why the property feels bigger, more complex, and more alive than it appears on the surface. These systems are a testament to Eustace's approach to life: independence, careful planning, respect for nature, and long-term thinking. They show that Turtle Island isn't just a place to live. It's a place engineered for self-sufficiency, creativity, and resilience. And once you start noticing these systems, you can also imagine the ways he might solve challenges the average person wouldn't even see, like hidden storage, subtle paths, or clever workspaces tucked into the landscape. It's another layer of his property that makes Turtle Island fascinating, functional, and full of surprises. Fame and what the public never gets to see. Eustace Conway is famous for a reason.
Watauga County inspectors raided Conway's Turtle Island Preserve in North Carolina after complaint about alleged illegal building.
Most people know him from mountain men, documentaries, or occasional news stories about Turtle Island. But fame, in his case, only scratches the surface. The public sees cabins, woodwork, and demonstrations of primitive skills. What they don't see is decades of private work, countless small adjustments, and the systems that make the property function so smoothly. Fame shines a spotlight on the obvious, leaving the deeper layers in shadow. The cameras and crews that have filmed Turtle Island show impressive results, but they are limited by access, angles, and the narrative producers want. They film cabins, trails, workshops, and demonstrations. They show a fire pit, a stack of firewood, maybe a root cellar, but the land is vast, wooded, and full of corners, slopes, and slopes within slopes that are never visited on camera. Paths twist around trees and hills. Small working spaces tucked behind cabins or down low slopes rarely get attention. From a filming perspective, it's impossible to capture everything, and that leaves huge swaths of the property unseen. This partial visibility has always fueled speculation. People assume that because they can't see every nook, there might be hidden tunnels, secret storage areas, or unknown workshops. But the reality is simpler and just as impressive. Eustace built for function, not for drama. He designed spaces for weather, privacy, and efficiency. Many areas are simply tucked out of view because the land itself demanded it. Shade, airflow, proximity to water, slope stability, these are more important to him than camera angles. And that makes the property feel larger and more mysterious than it actually needs to be. Even visitors who spend a day on Turtle Island can only explore a fraction of the property. Long trails disappear into dense woods. Hills create natural blind spots. Trees, streams, and uneven terrain form natural boundaries that slow movement and obscure visibility. It's not secrecy for secrecy's sake. It's just the way wilderness works. And when you add a man like Eustace, who has been quietly shaping the land for decades, you get a place that appears layered, complex, and almost deliberately hidden to the casual observer. Fame also brings pressure. Eustace has had to balance public attention with the practical realities of living in the wild. Cameras, tours, and curious visitors cannot disrupt the carefully maintained rhythm of work, water systems, storage, and workshop flow. That balance requires discretion. Some areas are always off-limits, not because there's something terrible or scandalous, but because they are functional or delicate. A misplaced foot, a dropped tool, or an exposed resource could ruin years of careful work, and the land itself protects those spaces. The layout of Turtle Island naturally creates hidden corners and private spots. Slopes, ridges, and groves shelter work areas, storage, and quiet retreats. Water channels and natural drainage pockets divide spaces, keeping some areas cooler, drier, or more stable. Eustace works with these natural barriers. So much of what he built decades ago continues to function without anyone having to intervene. Cameras, visitors, and even guides rarely capture these subtle features, so the public only sees part of the story. This combination of fame and privacy gives Turtle Island an almost legendary feel. People assume that everything visible is the full story, but that's far from reality. Eustace lives in a multi-layered environment where every system, building, and path connects to another. Each corner serves a purpose, every slope has its role, and even the quietest or least obvious areas support life, work, or storage. The property is as much a functioning ecosystem as it is a wilderness home, and fame only highlights the obvious without revealing the deeper hidden efficiencies. And perhaps that's what makes the speculation about tunnels and secret spaces so compelling. Not because there's verified evidence of underground passages, but because the land, the structures, and the systems all point to a man who thinks in layers. When someone builds like Eustace, with purpose, foresight, and decades of trial and error, it's natural to imagine additional features tucked out of sight. But the reality is equally fascinating. A property engineered for efficiency, resilience, and independence, where function drives every design choice. Turtle Island is more than cabins, trails, and workshops. It's a place shaped by a lifetime of intentional work. Fame allows the world to peek inside, but the real story is in what can't be captured on camera. The private corners, the clever use of the land, the subtle systems, and the decades of skill embedded in every slope, every corner, and every structure. That's what makes Eustace Conway's world so remarkable. Visible or hidden, it is a testament to living deliberately, creatively, and independently. Would the public ever see that hidden tunnel? Drop your comments below and subscribe for more interesting stories like Conway's.